can obtain your primary need within your neighborhood. If you want to take your child to a school, in neighborhoods, we have primary schools, we have nursery schools, we have family clinics in neighborhoods, we have shopping areas in neighborhood, but not shopping complex. That is district level. So the primary needs of health, education, commerce is such that you obtain those within neighborhood. It is provided in the concept of building the city. Okay. Then neighborhoods combine to form a district. So if the hierarchy of whatever you need, you cannot get it in a neighborhood, you can go to the district center. And it's going to be very difficult for you to say you cannot get what you need. Again, if you don't need, you don't have it, go to the central area district. The central area is meant for multinational corporations, the big companies that will have the headquarters of their companies in the national capital of Abuja. So this is the concept according to the hierarchies. So you have some level of commercial activities within the neighborhood and within the district centers. And that's why for neighborhood center, district centers. So all these ones have been planned. Our major problem is habitual.
Habits die hard.
Precisely.
Always say habitual. That means he may. Habits die hard.
Precisely.
Always say habitual. That means he may never die. He may never die because habits die hard. So let's know this habitual aspect of it.
We have course to go to some cities that were told that they are beautiful, this and that. Okay. When we went to that place, we found that the only difference between we and them is discipline. We have to be disciplined.
It's okay. Let's pause you there. First, hold on. Let's pause you. Malam Kabir Yari, former country director, UN Habitat. Against the background of what the ES and the coordinator have said, and what you and I see, I imagine that you live in the FCT. What, in your opinion, is the ranking today of Abuja or the aspiration of Abuja as a world-class city?
Well, it is true. That is what we call the global cities. Abuja is a regional city and it's a global city. It has characteristics. You know, it has ECOWAS, secretariat, that is, and even many UN offices are serving as regional headquarters. The most important thing is that the city was planned from the ground, from the scratch. And the infrastructure is world-class compared to many African cities. So you find out that the city of Abuja is conducive for so many other regional organizations to place their headquarters in FCT. What is important, I think, is for the authorities in FCT to understand how they can attract more people. You find out that cities are judged according to what they call livability index. Livability index will look at the infrastructure, the availability of facilities, and including security. And for employees, they want high-class facilities for health and for education for their children. If you look at those parameters, to a large extent, Abuja is doing fairly well, but they need some other rooms for improvement so that they can play a real global city. A global city where you have so much ICT, where you have financial facilities that you can transfer, and the city that can provide very good conducive atmosphere for multinationals to operate.
In terms of livability,
yeah,
what is your assessment?
As far as I'm concerned, the livability is above average.
You seem reluctant to score. I mean,
I'm sure I must be living at Sokoro, Metama, or such areas.
Yeah, you find out that those areas are where those multinationals will stay. Metama, Sokoro, Garki, and others. But the challenges are with issues that you mentioned. You know that when you don't provide facilities in city, the facilities will find their place. And that is why those areas that were not developed, they're supposed to be a central area, well developed, and not central area, you know, as the coordinator said. There are hierarchy of centers. There is the neighborhood center, district center. Out of the districts, there are sector centers. So many districts will have sector centers. Before the sector centers, then you have the central business district. All these sector centers have not been developed, and the central business district has not been well developed. So if you want to attract more people too, is developing the central business district as designed, because we have a very fantastic design of the central district. If you see it with all the modern things, you can see it, the downtown. But the downtown in the FCT is not yet developed. So I think efforts need to be done to develop it further, because that will attract direct foreign investment. That will give a lot of other employment, and that will bring out infrastructure to improve the livability of the city.
Okay. Now, Perpetua Ohama, Director, Department of Resettlement and Compensation. Oh, they did the double-barreled responsibility. And, this is also part of the issues that we have in Abuja, that oftentimes leads to this issue of where people are supposed to live, where shanties are springing up, where people, feel that this is the place they can afford to pay and live there. If there are no homes there, they erect whatever, but they can do. Some villagers also sell some portions of land, and after a while, CDA will come and say, "Look, you are not supposed to occupy this. Take this place." As a matter of fact, that it is illegal. Meanwhile, the land was gotten from a village head or a chief and what have you. All right. So in terms of resettlement, how has it been? Because it's part of the reason some persons will go and occupy an area. This is my father's land. This is where I came from, and I'm not compensated. There are also issues of compensation. So this could lead to illegal occupation of certain areas that are not designated for people to live in. So what's your concern, looking at generally the issues that could lead to the issue of people not adhering to regulations guiding Abuja Master Plan?
Thank you very much. The issue of resettlement and that of compensation, okay, I would separate them for easy understanding of those watching us now. Compensation generally is when people's land are taken over for overriding public interest, building road, infrastructure, whatever, and we need to move people out of where they are. We'll value whatever they have put on the ground, and then we pay them so that they will be able to find it easy to move to another location. But in the case of resettlement, we're talking about the original inhabitants who are staying in a particular area, and we need to move them. If you look at the whole of this central area, we're talking about the whole of Gariki, Wuse, Maitama. There were people that were there originally. They needed to be moved to other locations so that the master plan can be respected, as you have rightly said, because there's an extent to which you can really manage with the people that are already there. So the initial plan was to move everybody out. Unfortunately, we're not able to do this at the beginning of the construction of the FCT, and then government decided we will do phased movement of the original inhabitants, which government is doing. But problems of funds, logistics, a lot of things are also affecting this movement of the original inhabitants. So naturally, when people come, they find it easy to get into these places, and then they get land illegally from the chiefs. We are now doing a lot of publicity, a lot of enlightenment, so that people will know that the only person who has a right to allocate land in the FCT is the president himself, and that power he has ceded to the honorable minister of
but the chief you're talking about,
yes.
He's the owner of that land. The chief has not been compensated. He has not been moved. So I want you to clarify, when a chief sells a land that belongs to him, right, originally, and government, of course, has its own eye on the land. What do you normally do, to stop such a sales? Because it's ongoing.
That's what I'm telling you, that the only person who has right over land in the whole of FCT is the president himself, who has ceded that power to the honorable minister of city. So he is the only one who can give approval for any transaction in land. Speaking rightly. The chief is entitled to live within his domain with his people. When we come, we do the enumeration, do all that, all the socioeconomic indices, we take them and then plan where to move them to. So he cannot just be selling land anywhere he sees, because Abuja is like a planning area. the whole of FCT is really a planning area, meaning that government has taken over this land and government will plan how to use every inch of the land. It is not for any individual to sit down and be selling land. And we have made people to understand this. And when you buy, let me tell you, the problem is not that people don't know. They know. But sometimes they will just say, okay, let's take the risk. It's better than not having anywhere to stay. At least if we buy land 200,000, who will sell land to you in Abuja 200,000 and you don't know it's illegal? You know. Because if you know the ones that are legal, you know how much it will cost. So people just do them, at least in the interim, let's just have somewhere to stay. When development control comes and remove it, they will move to another place. So they do know. And that is why you see most times the protesters not go far, because they are aware. And we always tell them. We go to radio, we go to television, to have jingles, just to enlighten people that you can't be buying land like that. But I think too, government needs to step up its business of moving some of these people
compensation
to the resettlement sites, pay compensation so that we can have a reduction in all this kind of squatter settlements that grow around the local communities. It is imperative, it is time for government to maybe reassess our method of doing things and try to move them faster than we have been doing. Because, like my boss had said earlier, the target population of Abuja by the time FCT is completed is 3.1. Now we are over 6 million in the city because of so many problems, including the security issues we had in some parts of Nigeria. So it's like everybody, northwest, everybody is moving towards Abuja. And I mean, you can't blame people for wanting to go to where they have security, where they can get employment, where they can get better life for themselves and for their children. So we also need, as government agencies, to step up our plans and see how we can accommodate some of this massive movement of people into the streets.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Ohama. I just to clarify this again, so the president has delegated the powers, not because you were saying ceded. I think more appropriately,
yes,
delegation
yes,
of authority. Yes. As he has delegated, he can also take it back. Yes. Okay, let's return to the Executive Secretary FCD, Engineer Ahmad. Engineer Ahmad, something that is a bit baffling to observers of the city. I mean, if you say you want to have a livable city, I've been talking about land use, even in phase one. Metama, Asokoro, Wusetu, Garikitu, and so on and so forth. You have seen, I have noticed in recent years, some worrisome development. I don't know how this things come about, and Kirian will also have noticed this. You just see structures coming up, see developers, you see their signboards everywhere, and what they are erecting just look like barracks. You drive in and you are asking yourself, who gave approval for the construction of this kind of structures? You have no breathing space, nothing whatsoever that will tell you that, look, if these structures were to be fully occupied, you will have congestion right there. Some of them are close to Metama. That's one. Secondly, some of the hills, I'm not quite sure of the names now. If you are driving on the outer ring road, which would be the like Murtala Muhammad, what's famously referred to as the Kubwa Expressway, you know the hills that border there that cover Mpapi, straight down. People have been excavating those hills and constructing on those hills, and I've said to myself, well, it is a risk that they face, because if there are mudslides, then those properties would go. But who is giving approval for these kinds of things? It's as if there is no land in the FCT. So everywhere you can get land, you go to Metama, part of Metama, for instance, if you're on Mississippi Avenue, you are just looking at this and you are seeing high-rise structures, residential. Isn't there development control? To say in a certain district you can't have more than a certain number of levels of floors. Go to some parts of Betama as well. I'm sure you would have done this as Executive Secretary. People are just taking over otherwise floodplains or green areas. And they are busy starting off with raft foundation, which means that you know that is a floodplain, which is why you are erecting a raft foundation, as though you were in Lekki in Lagos or some other riverine location. What is the problem?
Thank you very much. I think you have raised virtually about 2 or 3 fundamental issues regarding bordering on development control, like you said, which the coordinator has tried to give an outline of how these things are processed. One, talking about development within districts, he has explained, and I want to reiterate, yes, there are categories of these districts development. There are those that are supposed to be low density district development, then medium, and then high density, all covering certain population equivalents. It is expected, people should respect this. Respect in the sense that you present your development building plan for approval process with the Department of Development Control under the Abuja Metropolitan Management Council, and it is processed accordingly. Where there are issues with your proposal, during the vetting process, I'm sure they will normally reach out to the developer to draw his attention to those areas of violations also, or inadequacies, or where they think there are some excesses. You are expected to go and fine-tune your this into that. Once that is approved, that is what is expected to come up on that side. Where you see anything other than that, these are the areas where we go hard to just remove this, because you are developing in violation of what is the approved plan. This is not a tolerable case of admission. And we have areas variously scattered within the city that even in the most recent past, we have addressed that whoever is involved, if it has been brought to our knowledge, we normally take. And we have monitoring teams going around where on our own we spot such violations or where infractions, we normally will take it up and normally will direct the development control through the coordinator to see that go and remove this. And I think as recent as yesterday, they have been on some fields there. Talking about the rock blasting, you say, and maybe quarrying along some of these our hills and what have you along the expressway also. Yes, these are areas where, as far as we are concerned, they happen on the right hand side if you're going outward. Those are areas we call the urban fringes, which were initially not meant to be part of the city. But because of the population influx, which we have discussed, we had cause to have to refer to the planning department to see to controlling, planning the development around there so that we will not have haphazard development coming up. We call these areas urban fringes. And this, we are trying to now safeguard what can be done. Previously, the boundary of the city was to remain by the outer the northern expressway, which is the Kupo expressway, which we are talking about, Murtala Mohammed way. But because of expansion in our developments now, due to this population, you have seen people and layouts coming out around there. These are now planned layouts. We are trying to control that. We had cases with some of these excavations and blasting, which is causing not other than the degradation of the environment, and then which was the consequences of what you are raising, this fear of mudslides. It could happen. And then in the past, you could recall that we have challenges of these tremors coming. These are things that we felt can be controlled and curtailed if we respect the law. You have asked him whether he should just try to expatiate on habitual. It's something that we should not be afraid to disclose. It's an average attitude of an average Nigerian. Mm-hmm. What you say don't is what they want to do. Mm-hmm. And these are the problems and challenges we have. But we are also up to the task trying to see to it that where we are of the belief that this thing should not come up, we normally don't allow it to prosper, because others will think that these people are going with impunity and therefore they will also. We are trying as much as possible to take this under control.
Yeah, Shoaib Umar, I would like you to further amplify that, because what my colleague explained, the areas he mentioned, I may not be, I may not necessarily know the particular areas he mentioned, but I'm sure he was sure what he was talking about. So it then means that those areas are allowed. Those things he mentioned, those ones are approved. That's number one. I'm sure he doesn't have the professional know-how to know whether it is correct or not, but he saw something that he felt was unusual, right, as a city dweller. Right, you expand on that, you expatiate on that. Another is the fact that people can't just go and begin to spend hard-earned money on big structures. The type my colleague mentioned too, which is a kind of fortifying the foundation, knowing full well that this is an area that is a waterway and what have you, without getting authorization from an office responsible for that. Now, I am driving to the fact that there could be some persons in your organization who are aiding and abetting this, attitude or habits that you mentioned, because otherwise I can't earn money and begin to spend it on a place. It's illegal without having a backing of the office. It could be a fake document, so to speak, but then how did it, who gives the approval? Because if you don't have your papers, you can start, tilling ground and, and start burying your money, without being sure. So have you investigated to see if you have connivances, in your domain?
Thank you, Kilian. I think I would say more than whatever you've said now. And that is why I always hard, very, very hard on illegal development. There are some people that will not even be allocated the land itself. No allocation, no building plan approval. Yes, you are right to say people, and people could be that crazy to go and invest. Not even investing their money. They were unsuspecting subscribers, off-takers, to put in their money where approval is not granted. We always tell subscribers, all these off-takers, we're always in the media to warn them. If anybody wants to sell house for you, they will get allocation in some for mass housing. Yes, what they're supposed to do is to build house and then sell the house, not to sell the land. Unfortunately, they engage in selling the land. Okay, they sell the land. Before anybody should come to you, so, okay, I have house, ask him, where is the allocation? That's number one. After the allocation, if it is genuine, is there building plan approval? And I bet you, none of these developers that have this talent have building plan approval. We have, of course, to go to specifically Gube area. You see, somebody will develop a house, a housing estate, in an area that is even meant for infrastructure. We have a plan that, let me give an example of Ahmad Bello Way. This is very long. It starts from the central area, it radiates down to the outer cities, outer parts of the city, and then at an area where it's supposed to pass, because the road has not reached that place, somebody will go and construct a housing estate. Is it the housing estate that are going to leave and then not control our road? That house will go because it's illegal. Our house, we must respect our plan. We must respect that road must be constructed. So anytime we have these challenges, we remove all these ones. And every day, we are removing all this development. But again, the people are so hard, so recalcitrant. Whenever we have this part, they know whatever doing is wrong. They take us to court, and the court will give us injunction. Do not do this, do not do that. But we know our powers. We respect the laws. We pursue it to the letter and make sure whatever law or whatever order that has been is appreciated because of the strength of our submission in the court. The issue of development in all these areas where they are blasting rocks, they are also illegal. Because ab initio, when you have your land, you go to development control approval, you have supposed to have environmental assessment report to determine how that your development is going to affect the neighborhood. Without even going to all these people who go and start blasting rocks. And you see, in the process of administering this city, we have, of course, to create departments in order to shoulder some responsibilities, some challenges that we are encountering. We have the FCT has the Honorable Minister has already given an order. A new department of solid mineral and allied matters is now created.
Who authorized the blasting of rock in those places? Who authorized it? Did somebody just move in his bulldozer to start blasting, or other machinery to start blasting without authorization?
Just yesterday, we have paused to visit all these sites. There is no building plan approval. And there are some sort of misconception. And I feel there are some sort of, what can I say, time to cut corners. People will go to an agency that is not responsible for that action and get an approval. We have cause yesterday to go and ask who gave you the permission to start blasting zero. And we saw a permission.
In operations in the city, as we develop the infrastructure along our roads and service corridors where we encounter rocks, these have to be, of course, removed to give way for the placement of the infrastructure. This we do it within the FCDA body through our various contractors developing those, and we normally employ this rock blasting. So this, we don't have any problem or issue with it, and we do it in collaboration with, there is a team normally in the FCT that we call rock blasting approval team, with membership from the Nigerian police, anti-bomb squad, from the DSS, from the mining cadastral office of the Ministry of Mines and Steel Development. This, I think, of course, then from the Development Control and Engineering Services of the FCD. These are people that will go around. But the other peculiarity, which is the one of concern, the blasting operation of the one of concern, is where the rocks are on properties, the plots of land allocated to developers. Some of these developers want to just do that blasting because they want to put up there. This still being reviewed by the team is handled separately, because this is to pave way for development of infrastructure, which must be done. We take it very, very cogently through the contractor. But this one, we make sure that it is processed before a developer can be allowed to do that. The other issue of the blasted is quarrying activities, which licenses are being given by the Ministry of Mines and Steel Development through the Mining Cadastral Office to very many, some in fact are licensed offices, companies coming to just do blasting operation. Where such are encountered, normally we use the development control to apprehend such, and we are in collaboration with the Ministry of Mines and Steel Development to see to it that where they are going to issue such license, especially within the FCT, that authority of the president within the area marked FCT is very strong, that you must, any government agency wanting to do anything in FCT must seek the clearance of the FCT authority.
You know, Executive Secretary and the other guests, it's a very interesting conversation. We're going to have to take a short break. I think the former country director of UN Habitat was also extolling the fact about global cities that are very well planned. Well, some of us have a heritage of coming from some of the best planned cities around the world. And I'm talking about Benin City. I've said that on several occasions. Oh, Good Morning Nigeria. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now.
The counsel of our fathers.
My advice to these young people is, please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youth, let's build our nation together.
What we face mostly now are flashes of cowardly attacks from the rump of groups that have been routed in one location or the other, moving to another to give the false impression that they are still strong. Our ultimate goal is to eliminate them altogether. and restore total and lasting peace over every inch of the Nigerian soil. Sounding tall, we take it home. We are determined to ensure that every inch of the Nigerian soil is safe. That determination is there. The order has been given. But we shall continue to protect the lives and property of Nigerians and foreigners in our midst. We shall continue to work for the peace of the nation and deter elements that constitute threats to the people. We shall bear the full powers of the government to secure every inch of our land. We shall not rest until peace is fully restored to Nigeria.
This message is brought to you from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Every day in our country, senior citizens are discriminated against, disparaged, and treated with disdain by those who ought to respect them. We are all complicit in the way we have treated the elderly members of our society as institutions, families, or members of a shared society. Every time senior citizens get offered less than they deserve for the work they do because they are old, poor, and desperate, we are failing them. Senior citizen loses a child, and wow, they must be responsible for their death. Every time a senior citizen gets labeled a witch, is called mad, and shooed out of the way because they have no memory of where they were headed and look unkempt, we are failing them. We say, abeg, it all old, make it do die, make everybody for rest, to ailing parents, uncles, and aunts. That's discrimination. That is neglect. When you see an old woman getting beat up and being accused of witchcraft, do not turn the other way. Stop and teach people that white hairs, wrinkles, and hunchbacks are no evidence of witchcraft. Aging comes with a memory decline. Sometimes it's not out of place to have elderly people lose their way, forget details of their lives, and how to properly take care of themselves. When they get to this stage, they deserve your empathy, not scorn. Our ailing fathers, mothers, aunties, and uncles are deserving of quality healthcare and peaceful transition. Make their last moments memorable. Senior citizens have paid their dues. They deserve your care. Stop all forms of discrimination against them today.
To every politician, as the campaigns gain momentum and passions begin to rise, remember, the errors of your opponents do not make you a success. Do not run down your opponent and inflame passions to violence between and among your supporters. What counts is what you plan to do for the electorate and how you intend to relieve their sufferings and bring succor. Nigeria is in dire need of patriotic leaders at all levels, leaders who will make national development their priority. Concentrate on telling the electorate what you intend to do when you get into office. Focus on making your vision clear to the electorate. Don't engage in verbal abuses, fake news, or speeches. Keep dealing with issues that will bring progress. You win the hearts and minds of the people by being above board, by being civil, patriotic, and showing empathy. Let's join hands to make the 2023 elections peaceful. A message from the National Orientation Agency.
The counsel of our fathers.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youth, let's build our nation together.
All right, thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Of course, we are deliberating on how to restore Abuja master plan. And of course, our guests are still here with us. And at this point, I'd like to bring in the lady among us here, because what is under your purview, has a lot to do with humanity, has a lot to do with families. Let's talk about resettlement once again. What are the issues or challenges that you face, or that original inhabitants face? Because I know there are still some pockets of settlements, original settlements. We have that in Garikitu, we have somewhere in Gwarimpa, I see one in Utako area, places you could see that people are in Mabushi as well, and what have you. So, what are the real challenges when it comes to resettlement of individuals? What do you resettle? Is it just cash, or do you have structures where they move into when they are resettled? What is the policy all about?
Thank you very much. I would just like to quickly say that there are two programs under this. One is relocation, one is resettlement. Relocation is where you have to move people, just give them land, pay them compensation, then they move to that area and build by themselves. That's mostly when it's affecting other Nigerians. For instance, if we give you a house somewhere and government needs that land for a critical infrastructure, you have to move, like the coordinator has said earlier. Will now relocate you, you can go and build. But when we're talking of the original inhabitants, we are supposed to build houses for them. And if we're following global standards, best practices in the world, we're supposed to make them have better houses than where they are currently staying. So that's why it's also a challenge, because you need to provide houses, infrastructure, roads, hospitals, schools, all of them meeting standards. And the issue of funding.
But is it not in the budget of the FCTA? Is not in the original budget of the FCTA? So why would it be a funding problem?
Sometimes what you wish is not what you get, because availability is very critical. If the government doesn't have enough funding, they have to share the funds they have between all areas of need. So you may not get what you are proposing for the year. And so for my department, we don't build the infrastructures, we don't build the houses. So there are other arms of government who are responsible. When they make them available, our own is to make sure that they meet international best standards. Then we'll begin to move the people. So far, we have not been able to move a lot of communities. And honestly, my executive secretary is here and he knows how worried he is, because we really, really need to move more people so that the city can. We are looking at some of the city of Abuja now, like he has scored us above average. That were started. I don't really understand. But somehow, the places have not met the standards that we propose as a department to be able to.
In some of these areas in phase 2, the infrastructure is not there. In Mabushi, for instance, there's no infrastructure.
There's infrastructure in some parts of Mabushi.
In which part?
It's just a few areas that they don't have infrastructure, and that was because there was an arrangement of how to provide those infrastructure, which they are still looking at and seeing whether
other than Amadu Bello Way that borders part of Mabushi. There's no. Where is the infrastructure in Mabushi? I know. I mean, this is just a question that I'm throwing. But
just to help
is it on the research?
Yes.
Okay.
I think mention must be made that some effort has been made by the administration to develop some resettlement schemes at Shere Gallery, for example, was a resettlement, and Apple resettlement. We don't have problem with ASO because we've been able to move some people from Garaki and other places, Apajanye, and for Wasa. We have developed was a resettlement, planning to move all the communities along the airport access. Unfortunately, we've not completed that, and this has now been overtaken by some of these IDPs in FCT. It's a challenge. We had GB resettlement. It was a resettlement site developed to move these people you are talking about in phase 2, Jabi, Mabushi, of that time. Incidentally, within that period, the government of the day took over that place and allocated it to the police. So it's a challenge. GB research is a very wide area that has been developed. So we now started developing this Shere Gallery is somewhere The site, the houses have been developed or more or less for the various communities of Jabi, Utako, Mabushi, Padna also. Unfortunately too, the access to the place, which is it's quite a stretch from Mpapi to that location, has not yet been fully developed, and the terrain there is not friendly. Efforts are being made now because the contract for that road construction has been awarded, and we are working to see to it. The communities have accepted their willingness to be moved to that, but there are certain facilities also basic there that we are still making effort to see to it that we provide. Then the issue of Mabushi, which you raised. Yes, Mabushi has not been developed. The infrastructure in Mabushi and those adjoining districts around there, Katampe, Mabushi, Kado, these are districts that have been earmarked to be developed through public-private partnership arrangement which was by the government, and it was approved by FEC. Unfortunately, that approval has not yet been withdrawn. So we cannot develop the infrastructure of Mabushi through the conventional budgetary, and in any case, funds for the development of this huge capital cost intensive infrastructure is not there from government. Yes.
Are you suggesting, yes, as well as Mrs. Ohama, that, for instance, some of these traditional communities that remain in Garki-2, in Utako, and Mabushi and Gwarimpa, I thought that they were part of, my thinking was that they were part of the Abuja landscape, so that, I believe, visitors came and you were taking them around, you would say, oh, this settlement that you are seeing here is a representation of the traditional way of living. Are you expecting, in terms of resettlement and relocation, to remove these persons from these communities?
For those ones in phases 2 and 3, which have already been planned, discussion has been taken to advanced stages with their community leadership or so to prepare and provide resettlement sites, and this has been agreed with those people. We are still on the course of providing those facilities to move them. But the current FCT administration, under the Malam Muhammad Musa Bello's concept of doing this, is where we encounter settlements. Now, if we're preparing a layout, we will need to just prepare for integrating them, so that there is no need to reduce these issues of what he has raised, Kirian has raised regarding this land belonging to chiefs or so. As she has explained very clearly, every square inch of land or square meter, metric now, of land in Nigeria, Abuja, 8,000 square kilometers, is under the purview or prerogative of the president, which has been delegated to the minister of the FCT. By this extension, we are saying that if originally these people were to be moved out, they were to be moved to the adjoining contiguous states. But that has been overtaken by event because it could not be achieved that time. Now, so we now leave it to the arrangement that we will be moving them on the basis of development, catching up with those communities, just to allow, since we are not ready to have a place. So where we encounter them now, the aspiration of the Honorable, and he has directed accordingly, which we are seeing, is to provide an integration for that.
Sorry, please. I know we're getting pressed for time, but it's a very interesting conversation. Yes. I would like, maybe coming from the coordinator, in the city, and more particularly in the Central Business District, one is curious that monster structures are given approvals, high-rise structures are being erected with no parking spaces. And the result is that you have vehicles parking on pedestrian walkways, congesting the roads and so on and so forth. You see some of the structures that are ongoing in terms of construction. And when you drive past, you just shake your head and say, who gave approval for this? a structure going so many stories up, and there is no parking space, they have no ramps, nothing whatsoever. So when the offices get occupied, the next thing you start saying, they will tell you when you want to drive, so no, you can't park inside, go and park outside. So how does this happen?
Okay, you see, in the provision of planning in the central area, there are specific plots that are devoted for parking, multi-level parking plots only. Those ones are there. Unfortunately, up to now, the owners of those plots that have been allocated for this, for the provision of these parking spaces, they are looking for a situation whereby they will be allowed to build high-rise open complex. Many a times, we receive the request for the desecration of this plot for another, you refuse. There are these big plots in the central area now, presently, that are meant in order to absorb all these ones. But the people that have been allocated, they have a misconception of using it for another use, and we refuse.
So what then is the power of the authority if land is allocated on terms? On terms. If those terms are not being met, I'm saying you're talking about a package, which is what you will find in global cities. To say that packets are developed, multi-level parking lots, so that you go there and you are able to also walk around. And trees are planted, and then you have the sidewalk. Now you are struggling with vehicles to walk on this. You don't even have space as a pedestrian to walk. If land has been allocated and a person is coming around to say, I want to build high-rise, you make money even from those parking lots of multi-level. So what is the authority doing?
We refuse to give approval for that, and we have already submitted. Anybody that has been allocated this land and he doesn't use it the way we want, it can be revoked and be given the people that would like to use it for the purpose in which we want it done. Abuja Master Plan must be respected. All this calculation has been made. And you see, on all these areas, no plot will be developed without the calculation of the parking provision, the parking requirements of all these plots. We made this calculation. Inbuilt, there are those that have maybe first, second floors devoted to parking inside before you commence going up to for the other development. And again, there is another important issue. You see, it is not because we don't have provision for commercial activities in the central area. I have a course to visit one plot that is developed, 12 floors. That 12 floors has been developed for almost 15 years. Up to now, there are so many floors that are not yet occupied. So it's as if the cost of rent of all these ones, according to people that build them, they made it exorbitant, so much that people cannot afford, and that's why they are radiating to other places.
We'll stop you there. You just raised one thing that just struck me now. So rent, I don't know. In Abuja here, landlords are emperors. I mean, nobody regulates what you pay in any part of the Abuja. What is paid in Stockholm can be paid in Gwarimpa or in Koboa, as the case may be. We don't have that regulation. Maybe that's a program for another day. Right, but I'm concerned about beautification of cities, and I want to bring you in here, Malam Kabir Yari, beautification of cities in China and elsewhere. You could see, I mean, flowers everywhere, different colors of flower in areas that should be green or green areas. We don't have enough of green areas in Abuja. You could do a kilometer or 2 or 3 inside China with flowers all over the place, both sides of the road. Beautiful things to see. And when you talk about upgrading Abuja up to to a world class, I think Malam Kabir even gave you a high mark, by saying you're above average. So what can be done, I mean, to beautify Abuja further?
Yeah, I think one other thing is that there's the greening of cities all over the world because of issues of climate change and trying to bring down the microclimate effect to bring the temperature of the cities down, because cities do have of glasses, glare, so that is the heat islands in the cities. So it is important to have green so that it can help in environmental management, and 2, it can help in beautification, as we mentioned. Abuja has done very well. If you can recall, some few years ago, about 10, 15 years ago, it was very hot because of the location being in the lowland, and usually low areas do have a lot of hot temperatures. Like if you look at Benue, you look at Niger, Yola, on the valley. But they made a lot of problems during the administration of the civilian administration, 1999. They made a pledge to to plant more than 1 million trees at that time, and that was why the Department of Parks and Recreation was established. They developed nurseries for trees they have, and even the master plan left a lot of space for open spaces and the greening. In fact, left after residential development, the next in Abuja was the open spaces where you use the rocks and others for beautification. What I think is the Department of Parks and Recreation have been trying. As far as greening is concerned, Abuja is a green city. What they need to do is to improve, just as you said, the ornamental trees that you see. The ornamental trees to improve the road furniture and so on.
A foreign visitor once came into town and bringing the visitor from the airport into town, I mean, his first observation later was to ask a question. I'm not quite sure what the botanical name is. I'm not very fond of that tree, by the way. He says, is this your national tree? The one they call Mars tree or police tree. You know, it grows straight, it doesn't have branches and
masquerade.
Is it masquerade, mass tree or you know, and then sometimes you see, you know, when the wind blows, you know, it's going, it's giving way like this.
That's very funny to me. Before you know to start
it was not swaying, you know, it doesn't, I don't know where it comes from, but I mean, that question was, is this your national tree? Couldn't we get on that tree? But very quickly, Executive Secretary, some years ago, I mean, I was part of a team that toured the location, something like the equivalent of a Silicon Valley that was being constructed.
Technology Village, which is a program and a project of the FCT administration during the years of the then FCT Minister Malam Nasir El-Rufai. This Abuja Technology Village was conceived to provide like an automotive.
We don't really have time for you to go deep into this.
Okay, but the infrastructure, the project is on.
But my concern is that you mentioned the Rufai. It was talking about 10, 20 years ago, thereabout, or 15 years ago, right? Okay. And we're still there. When it comes to technology, Nigerians don't really move things fast, right? Technology Village conceptualized over 20 years ago or something, and today is not there. It's for another day, right? So we can get into that, you know, deeply and get it done. So on this note, I'd like to thank you immensely for sharing your time and your thoughts with us this morning on the program. Engineer Shehu Hadi Ahmad is Executive Secretary, FCDA. And of course, Shoaibu Umar, Coordinator, Abuja Metropolitan Management Council. We also thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you.
Malam Kabir Yari, former Country Director on UN Habitat. It's been a pleasure with you this morning. All right. And Mrs. Perpetua Ohama, Director, Department of Resettlement and Compensation at UDA. It's so wonderful talking to you this morning.
Thank you very much.
All right. Let's take a bit of sports before we call it a day.
Achraf Hakimi made himself a hero with a chipped winning penalty as Morocco stunned Spain in a shootout after a goalless draw to reach the World Cup quarter-finals. Morocco now joined Ghana, Senegal and Cameroon as the only African nations to ever make it to the quarter-finals of the World Cup. In the second fixture, it was a case of the old guard making way for the new, as young star Gonçalo Ramos became the first player to score a hat-trick at this year's World Cup in Qatar. However, his 3 goals were just half of the 6 goals scored on the night by Portugal. Pepe, Guerrero and Rafael Leao were the other trio who made it 6. Switzerland, however, got a breeze of consolation after Emmanuel Akanji slotted home their only goal from a corner in the 58th minute. Portugal will now face Morocco for a place in the semi-final on Saturday.
All right, that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. As always, we appreciate your being with us. Join us again tomorrow for a fresh edition. Same time, 7 in the morning. Look after yourselves. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Kurian Umaya. Do have a great day.